Mr. Barsamian, thank you very much for your time. So first question is, just 5 months ago, Donald Trump was inaugurated President of the United States and new administration was established in Washington. So your contacts with new administration, what can you say on their position on Armenian-Turkish relations, on Karabakh conflict and genocide recognition?
So we've begun meetings with the White House, and as of late, April came around. President Trump took a similar position as previous presidents, not using the exact word genocide, but using every other word, the definition of the word genocide. So we were disappointed with that, as usual. We thought probably he'd break out and do it, but the fact that he didn't is, it's one of those things that no one's ever happy with the statement, but we will still urge the president to call it what it is, which is genocide. Aside from that, the administration disappointingly really cut funding for the entire international community across the board. So Armenia received equally to Azerbaijan, Georgia, all the other republics, and right across the board, like a 67% decrease in funding. Now it's up to Congress. So our work begins right now. We're in the appropriations season, and we'll look to increase Armenia's funding in Congress, and that really takes place on the Hill. So we had our Hill meetings this week. We met with the White House this week. Those are the things that we're doing to get our funding levels back up. As far as U.S.-Armenia, U.S.-Turkey relations, it's pretty much where it's always been. There's probably some track 2 diplomacy going on in discussions, but no breakthroughs right now. I read an article today of a former diplomat calling for Turkish diplomat actually, calling for better relations with Armenia. I would say Karabakh's at pretty much a standstill. As you know, they closed the OSCE offices in Baku and in Yerevan. I would say the fault clearly falls on the Azeri side. The violations are continuing daily. Soldiers are being killed daily. The OSCE co-chairs know it. The Azeris have not lived up to the agreements they made in the last 2 serious meetings. So Armenia's position and our position as Armenian Americans are that live up to your agreements for Azerbaijan and do what you're supposed to do, and also deal directly with Karabakh and with Armenia and Karabakh at the table.
You talked about American financial aid reduction to Armenia and 2 other post-Soviet countries. Is it possible that American aid to Karabakh will be fully cut?
I don't believe it will be fully cut. I think you'll see aid take on different components. Obviously, you saw Millennium Challenge monies are not continuing, and we've talked to the administration about that. But all the countries have decreased funding. So what I think is happening is aid will move to military aid and partnership for peace money. As you know, Armenia has done a very good job of sending troops to Afghanistan and has done everything the U.S. has asked it to do in terms of sending troops overseas. I think they'd like to increase troop deployments, and I think that's a very good thing. Armenia does a very good job of balancing its Russian relationship, its U.S. and its European relationship, and we just hope that balance and parity continues. And as far as funding, we hope that there's more direct assistance that has to do with training and with technical support.
American ambassador to Armenia recently spoke about possible American investments in Armenian energy sector. He spoke about possible 8 billion investments in Armenia. Is American business interested in Armenian economy?
I think so. I think that it's not just interested, there's great things happening in Armenia. As you know, the high-tech sector here has taken off, and it's not around just software development, it's around innovation technology. So Armenia is a leader of brain power in the world, and I think Armenians are starting to come up in the world, and it's being noticed. So if the US government wants to invest in energy, that would be a wonderful thing as well. And I think that kind of investment will assist in the development of Armenia the infrastructure of energy independence, which when you see where we are in the world, Armenia has to have some diversification so that it can balance all the interests of transit routes and making sure that it has security for itself, because at any one point, one of these routes could be cut.
Do you expect some kind of new developments in US-Armenian economic trade relations?
TIFA is something that we're looking at, and those kind of trade agreements are very helpful. Armenia has to increase their relationship with the U.S. I think it's done a good job just signing with the EU, having a relationship with the economic union that they're in with Russia. Armenia's done a very good job of making sure that it balances off all its partners, and on the civil society side, it's done very well. It's as open in the Caucasus as an independent republic can be, and it's doing better and better every year. We urge independence in terms of freedom of press, and as compared to Azerbaijan, it's totally well beyond where it should be, and it should continue to grow in terms of the Freedom Index.
Right now, we can see very complicated US-Russian relations. Is it possible that relations will have some kind of influence on American-Armenian relations?
It never has. Armenian Americans are here to support Armenia, understanding that Armenia has its own relations with Russia, with the US, with the European countries, with Iran. So Armenian Americans are just focused on US-Armenia relations, enhancing that relationship. We obviously urge the government of Armenia to keep good relations with all of its neighbors. Certainly, we have very open channels with the United States government, and we urge them to continue to pay attention to Armenia and Karabakh.
We know about Turkish President bodyguards incident in Washington. So what can you say on this? Is it possible that that incident will have some kind of influence on American-Turkish relations?
That's a troubling trend, actually. I don't know if people know. That's the third time this has happened. In 2011... Third time. In 2011, the Turkish president entered the wrong door in the UN, and there was a scuffle with his security and UN security. Last year, about 18 months ago, with Brookings Institute outside, there was a scuffle with protesters. And this time, a good colleague of ours, Adam Hamparian, happened to be there when Kurdish Americans were protesting. This doesn't happen in America. It's bad behavior, and it's not tolerated. Armenians don't like to see, and Americans don't like to see, our freedoms tampered with. Certainly, as American Armenians, we should stand up for anyone who doesn't allow for freedom of speech, and that's here in Armenia and in America. So it's a very bad lesson for what's going on in the world. And President Erdogan, being a NATO partner, it's about as bad as it gets. I think the fallout from that is Congress watched it happen, watched those tapes, and basically came out and said this is not going to be tolerated. As a result, the Turkish lobbies have actually added to their lobbying budgets because they're just getting a black eye, which they deserve. And I don't care how much money they put into it, it's not going to change people's minds. There is bad behavior, there's good behavior, and if Turkey wants to become a member of the European Union, it better start acting like a responsible partner. Right now, that isn't. I feel badly for the people of Turkey. They deserve better, and this president isn't acting to the honor of a leader of a world power. Right now, I just don't see that he's, it's a real problem for him, and it's going to be a problem for him throughout the world.
Thank you very much for this interview.
My pleasure.